The Pennsylvania Republican Party continues its losing streak following a special election that has restored the slim Democratic majority in the state House of Representatives. Now, Democratic candidate Lindsay Powell had crushed her opponent, who you see pictured over here, getting over 65% of the vote against Erin Connolly Ottenreith. Ottenreith described herself as a middle-of-the-road, sensible Republican candidate, very, very interested in fiscal conservatism, fiscally responsible. Okay? Now, it turns out, generally, when you're talking about middle of the road for Republicans, that generally means they're literally driving on the middle of the road inside of Crazy Town. Okay? In fact, according to her own social media accounts, she was at January 6th. In a post dated January 7th, Ottenreith wrote that she was at Washington, D.C., at the Capitol riot because, quote, there's only one person who has stood up to pedophilia, sex trafficking of children, and satanic worship, and it is Donald J. Trump. He is the only leader who has ever addressed the elephant in the room. Yes, every. Okay. So, at January 6th, although she says, well, I wasn't actually part of the violence, and I was appalled when I watched what happened later. So I wasn't there with any of the actual rioters. Wait, but were the rioters Antifa? I don't know. I don't know. She didn't say anything about that. But let me remind you, by the way, on her claims of like, oh, Donald Trump's the only one going after pedophilia and sex trafficking. She's talking about the same Donald Trump that was friends with Jeffrey Epstein and knew that Epstein liked them young. I'm pretty sure he knew what Epstein was up to. That's also the same Trump who would regularly walk into the dressing room of the Miss Teen USA pageant that he used to hold, where, yes, underage girls were sometimes present and were dressing. Same Donald Trump who has had many serious and credible allegations of sexual assault against him, the most recent one from E. Jean Carroll. And I don't mean the most recent sexual assault, but the most recent allegations that were basically proven in court. He was found liable for sexual abuse during a defamation case. And so this is also the guy who said he was standing up for, or this is the guy she said was standing up for children. Really?
Give me a break.
Yeah, okay. It's better, though. Apparently, she also is a bit of an election denier. She says that while she had no evidence of tampering in the 2020 election, because there isn't any, she said, quote, I question it. Oh, you question it. You don't have any evidence, though. Well, she says, in part because of procedural changes in the handling of mail-in ballots. Now, in the county, Allegheny County, where ballots apparently were previously handled by workers at polling places, but are now counted in a central warehouse. And so that's why, I have questions now because they changed the way to be more efficient. All that stuff, it's a fraud. I question it, though. Okay. When asked about pedophilia, Ottenreith, she says she wasn't aware of any specific cases where children were being abused. Well, I mean, thank goodness. Because it's not like it doesn't happen. It does. In fact, she even cited examples. Not specific examples, but examples where it happens. She noted the well-established cases of pervasive abuse within the Catholic Church. Good, she admitted it, yes. And by Penn State University coach Jerry Sandusky. Again, very obvious cases here. Also citing crimes by Jeffrey Epstein and ongoing concerns about other wealthy, powerful people who may have been involved. Okay, fair, but then says, at least Donald Trump had the courage to bring this up. But wait, he didn't. And by the way, not the only one. In fact, you have groups that are nonpartisan, by the way, that have been sounding the alarm about this stuff, about wealthy, powerful people that do get away with this stuff. Okay, and again, having to point at groups, like the Catholic Church, priests, priesthood, and of course you have people, for example, not really when it comes to pedophilia, but when it comes to rape in general. I mean, Danny Masterson, he he got sentenced to 30 years for rape. So, I mean, it's a very serious issue that does happen in Hollywood. But again, what this says to me is that she was kind of trying to appeal to the QAnon crowd, right? And those are the people that tend to make up allegations, mainly to point it at Democrats as well as the LGBTQI plus community, when in reality, it happens to be generally nonpartisan, believe it or not, but done by, well, straight men. And let's be honest, straight cisgender males are the ones that tend to do the most sexual assault by a large majority, as well as cases of pedophilia. And so those are the people that generally you need to watch out for. And yes, it happens. There's a lot of people who are, right-wing, claim to be very pro-family, pro, religion, whatever, that are actually using those positions in order to entrap and, victimize girls, women, etc. And so that's an issue. And it's not just an issue that Trump has brought up. Now, she also is skeptical of vaccines, unsurprising, especially when it came to the COVID vaccine, but others as well. And so now here's the thing that she tried to do. So she knew that these were not exactly winning positions, right? But she took them and tried to claim that she's reasonable, right? Now, in the vaccines, for example. So look, vaccines, you could come and you could say things like, well, look, I'm just concerned about mercury, for example. That was the example that she used. So, there's mercury in vaccines, so I'm kind of hesitant on this. Well, now, wait a minute. The vast majority of vaccines do not contain mercury. Now, there are ones that do. It's the flu shot, right? Now, the thing is that when you do your research, and I always love this, right? Do your research, do your research. Now, what they mean by research, and they, I mean, is anti-vaxxers, right, is generally somebody's crappy YouTube video, which is ironic because I'm speaking in a YouTube video. But hey, gotta call it out, right? Well, the thing is, when you actually do the research, you find out that there is a different kind of mercury that's used in certain flu vaccines. This mercury is called thimerosal. And this is basically a preservative. It's meant to make it so that it doesn't, get moldy, okay? It's a preservative. And so that's different from the mercury that is ethyl mercury. So ethyl mercury, different than methyl mercury. Now, methyl mercury happens to be the dangerous one that can cause poisoning in human beings. Actually can and does, and that's found in the environment. So now, methyl mercury, not used in the COVID vaccine. In fact, I don't even think that ethyl mercury, the kind that is a preservative used in these flu vaccines, is even in the COVID vaccine. And it's not in the routine childhood vaccines. And by the way, up until 2001, it was involved in routine childhood vaccines. And guess what? They removed it. Not because it was dangerous or harming children or the cause of autism, which is all these, anti-vaxxer positions, which, again, mainly right now adopted by the right wing. But I remember back in the day covering people who were ostensibly left wing, basically saying, oh, look at all these chemicals in the vaccines. Look at the mercury in the mercury. They removed it in 2001 in order to say, look, okay, we got rid of it. It wasn't really harming anybody, but we're going to do what we can to make you not afraid of these vaccines because of how helpful they are in preventing these just horrific childhood diseases. If removing it makes you feel better about taking it, okay, we'll remove it. We'll figure out a way to preserve these vaccines, in a different way, just as long as you take it, because these childhood diseases are just absolutely horrific. And we'd rather do this than have your children, due to your fear, be exposed to these horrible things. Okay? So that's it. I go through and I explain the context here because she takes crazy positions and claims to be normal. but you still hold crazy positions. And so, thankfully, voters weren't buying it. Although, to be fair, it's a Democratic district, right? So, not entirely surprising, but still, I'll take it. A win is a win, right? And Tuesday's result is just the latest in a string of defeats for Republicans in Pennsylvania. With the biggest loss being, of course, the Trump-backed Dr. Oz, who got obliterated by John Fetterman. Now, the month also saw Democrat Josh Shapiro beat Doug Mastriano by 57% to 42% to be elected governor of Pennsylvania. And so, oh, look at that. Democrats making gains in the Midwest. And it's because they're running on things that are, generally pro-worker policies, as opposed to insane right-wing policies that even she tried to dress up as reasonable or normal, but weren't.